That's not the purpose of respectful disagreement. It's to have honest conversations that allow for vulnerability, allow for deep listening, and allow for that person to be heard and valued, as well as myself to be heard and valued. But I don't control them, Monica. I can only choose how I show up.
Hi, I'm Monica Packer, and you're listening to About Progress, where we are about progress made practical. Picture this. It's Sunday family dinner at my parents' home with me, my 6 siblings, their spouses, and all their children gathered around. We are a big bunch and a loud one, and diverse too, from personality to politics. Before we eat, one of my kids is asked to say the prayer to give thanks and to bless the food. We all close our eyes, bow our heads, and fold our arms. My child clears their throat and, in a high-pitched voice, proceeds to bless all the things we've been discussing as an insular family. This child blesses certain sides of certain wars, blesses particular political leaders, making it accidentally clear to the whole extended family how the Packer family likely feels about it all. By the end of the prayer, my eyes are wide open and I am grimacing, imagining the potential annoyance to full-on disagreement some of my family members are experiencing in response to what was said in the prayer. There's a lot of conflict in the world right now, and that is also leading to more conflict at home and with those that we love. Unless it isn't. Maybe you are like us and you find yourself avoiding hard conversations at all costs. Maybe you remind your kids before going certain places to keep their potentially offensive thoughts to themselves. Maybe in pursuit of peace, you are skimming the surface of connection in your relationships, choosing to agree to disagree, which basically means to not talk about the things you may disagree about. Over the past few years, I have interviewed several people about how to have more healthy conflict and hard conversations within our most important relationships. Today, I get to build on that by leaning into the idea that it is not only possible, but healthier to respectfully disagree. You will hear me interview Justin Jones-Fosu about his work to help people respectfully disagree. You'll learn about different conflict styles, the 5 pillars to respectful but hard conversations, and why this ultimately matters now more than ever. Justin is so gifted at teaching hard things in informative, practical, and even humorous ways. If you want to be less afraid of disagreeing with people in your life, then please listen on. Justin Jones-Fosu brings energy everywhere, whether scaling one of the famed 7 summits, dancing with his wife, or chasing around his 4 turbocharged kids. But his real passion is elevating workplaces, one keynote, one training, and one course at a time. As the CEO of Work Meaningful, Justin delivers 50-plus keynotes a year, helping organizations climb higher with enchanting employee experience through meaningful engagement, belonging, and leadership that actually sticks. An author and workplace researcher, Justin has written Your Why Matters Now, The Inclusive Mindset, and his latest, I Respectfully Disagree, a guide to navigating tough conversations in a divided world. With humor, insight, and research-backed wisdom, Justin doesn't just speak, he creates experiences that leave participants informed and transformed. That interview is coming up after a quick break for our sponsors. This episode is sponsored by Air Doctor. Americans spend an average of 90% of their time indoors, but did you know that the indoor air we breathe can be up to 100 times more polluted than outdoor air? I think a lot of you are coming around to that fact because I've gotten more and more messages asking what air purifier I have and if I'd recommend it, and the answer is Air Doctor, and yes, I 100% would recommend it. You can breathe easy with Air Doctor, the award-winning air purifier that eliminates 99.99% of dangerous contaminants like allergens, viruses, smoke, gases, mold spores, and more. One of my sons was recently diagnosed with more indoor allergies, and the doctor was relieved to hear we already have an air purifier. You can top that off with lots of smog days in our beautiful Salt Lake Valley, and I can tell you that the relief I have is high, both emotionally and physically, that Air Doctor is in my home. Air Doctor was voted Best Air Purifier by Newsweek, so it's no surprise that 98% of Air Doctor customers agree. Their home's air feels cleaner, safer, and healthier, and the Packer family is one of those happy customers. Unlike other purifiers, Air Doctor captures invisible particles 100 times smaller than standard HEPA filters. Head to airdoctorpro.com and use promo code MONICA to get up to $300 off today. Air Doctor comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee plus a 3-year warranty and $84 value free. Get this exclusive podcast-only offer now at airdoctorpro.com. That's airdoctorpro.com using promo code MONICA. One of the themes in our community over the years has been, it's never too late. In that spirit, I want to remind you that it's never too late to make a do something list. A DSL is a list you create of ways for you to prioritize your own fulfillment and to explore who you are, all outside the pressures of goals and resolutions. The first list I made back in 2016 changed my life, and hundreds of real women in this community have reported to me that their DSLs have changed their lives too. It doesn't matter what time of year it is. You can make a DSL for this season, from birthday to birthday, or to finish out the year. If you're ready to have more hobbies, to have more creativity, to have more fun or rest or adventure or connection, whatever it is, make sure you make your own do something list. To help you, I have a free training that is ready for you online right now. Go to aboutprogress.com/DSL and you can sign up for my free training, which includes a video and audio workshop, resources, and a guide and examples of so many DSLs from real progressors of this community. Again, go to aboutprogress.com/DSL to get your free training. Justin Jones-Fosu, welcome to About Progress.
I'm ready to make about progress.
You've already made it, and you've made my day in more ways than one. We're going to be talking about some complicated things today, but in ways that I think are going to open us up for so much more in our lives, and primarily within our relationships. You know, we are dealing with such a divisive world right now, and I think one of the things we tend to do within our relationships when we're not really agreeing with those who are closest to us, whether it's within our own homes or our neighborhoods or our communities or our churches or our schools, is we kind of repress how we feel. We avoid the hard topics because we don't want to disagree.
Yeah.
And I wanted to hear from you how preserving, in quotes, a relationship in that way is actually doing it no favors, and it's making us lonely, even lonelier.
Wow. That's a huge question.
It
And
is.
I'd love to answer it in story form, because for me, a lot of this I didn't realize came from my own inadequate relationship and my own loneliness as relates to my dad. And I remember when my parents divorced when I was 4 years old, I initially saw my dad every other weekend, and then it became 1 weekend a month, and then sometime I didn't see and or hear from my dad for 2 or 3 years. And when I was younger, it didn't bother me as much. I knew there's something different, but it was a 2.5-hour journey to my dad's, and I was just trying to build relationships at my school and go skating and all those things. But when I got older, and I remember I was living in Mississippi at the time, I would pull over to the side of the road. I was in my young 30s at the time, and I just start weeping, almost literally uncontrollably. And because I felt like I'd missed something. I had lost out on something. Now, what I'm not saying is just because somebody grew up with both of their parents that they lived a perfect life, because I've also heard those stories. But for me, I felt like I missed something. So I wanted to go confront my dad in 2019, Will Smith style. Now, not the Chris Rock version, but if for your listeners, and if you remember, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air version, right, where his dad came back into his life, and he was super excited to go on the road with his dad, and he's like, "I'm awesome." And then unfortunately, his dad did what his dad did, and he left without telling Will. And Will's like, "It's cool." He's talking to Uncle Phil. He's like, "I'm gonna get married without him, have kids without him." And he fell into Uncle Phil's arms. in an unscripted moment in that show. Most people don't know. And he asked, why didn't he love me? And so that's what I was going to do. I was going to go ask my dad, why didn't he love me? Why didn't he fight for me? But because of a really good therapist and a great leadership Charlotte cohort, they challenged me to, instead of going to confront my dad, to going and hearing his story.
Mm.
And as I went to hear his story, I asked more questions, and I actually, without knowing the steps of the 5 pillars that we wrote about and then researched, I followed the 5 pillars. And and it wasn't like I was trying to, create the pillars for this conversation, because I wasn't even thinking about the book. It was really about confronting my own issues, my own loneliness, because I grew up male anemic. I didn't never met either of my grandfathers. Didn't have a solid relationship with my dad. And so for me, there was just this always yearning, searching, right? And still stuff that still impacts me today. I still talk to my therapist about. But in confronting my dad and actually choosing to hear his story, it allowed me to choose to forgive him. Not because he asked me to, but because I chose to lean into that disagreement of our relationship. And
Mhm.
in that forgiveness, what I didn't realize, I was holding back a whole aspect of my heritage that I didn't even realize I had been doing. And it was that Ghanaian aspect of me, because my dad's from Ghana, my mom's from America. And I realized in that moment how many other, not just myself, but how many other people are actually holding themselves back because of unresolved disagreements or unresolved issues with people in their lives that they haven't addressed yet. And I
Mm.
became on a mission to really begin to respectfully addressing these issues with people in ways that honored myself, but also honored them in the same token.
Well, it doesn't sound easy. That's for
No, not at
sure.
all.
Um, I thank you for starting with that and how it led so much of what you do and how you help people. I'm curious what you see people resist
Yeah.
when they hear your story, or just even this idea about both self-confrontation, but, like, confronting others about these hard things. Like, what do they resist about that? How do they dismiss themselves from that even potential?
Well, a lot of times people don't know where to start.
Uh-huh.
And that's the biggest thing, is that we create this narrative in our mind about, "Oh, I can never have that conversation."
Mhm.
Like,
We
I'm
just
glad
write
you were
'em off.
able to, but no, I couldn't. And I always tell people, right, like, the first place for me is starting isn't actually with the person, it's with myself.
Mhm.
I'm a big advocate of therapy. I speak all over the world, and every time I get a chance to, I share on the stage, in front of people, on podcasts, that not only do I value therapy, I still go to therapy. And I don't go to therapy because there's something wrong with me, even though my kid might say something different. Um, but I go to therapy because I want to keep things going right. And that's been the first place, because outside of being challenged by my therapist and even my leadership Charlotte cohort, um, I wouldn't have gone to hear my dad's story. I would have just gone to tell him off
Mhm.
and to express my anger, my rage. I struggled with Father's Days, right? 'Cause I didn't want to do the fake card, right? It was just like, thank you for being a dad, right? Like, no, I was like, I would like send an email like, thank you for being a part of my birth. Like, I mean, I'm not joking, right? I mean, I'm being serious, because I
Yeah.
wanted to say Happy Father's Day, but I didn't want to give him a false sense of like that you were there for me.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize it was impacting me more than it was probably impacting him. And the therapy sessions were the great place for me to start. And whether that's, I'm a big believer in trained therapists, but whether that's, people's pastors, whether that's people identifying therapy, whether that's, video or in person, that's been a really great place for me to begin to actually, as a pillar one, is to challenge my perspective. And that's been the best part for me of helping people in that resistance, of starting there, doing some of that self work, right? Whether it's reading books, listening to this podcast, getting
Mhm.
therapy. But that's been the best part for me. And that's also the starting place for people. It's not the conversation, it's
Yeah.
beginning the process, how you are processing this information.
Yeah, I think we're all guilty of just jumping ahead to this potential conversation and coming up with our talking points and even our potential comebacks and how we're gonna respond to certain things, when really it comes back to yourself first. So with this, what kinds of conflict styles do you see people are holding on to when they're thinking about these kind of conversations?
Well, I think that there are places, right? I want to take a step back for a moment, because we talked about these four responses of conversational conflict, and I initially want to solve it for myself because I am, a disrespectful disagreeer, right? For the most part, right? There's different scenarios, right, where it's, I cut you off, you're wrong, that's dumb. Even if I don't say it out loud, I'm thinking it, right? And so I wanted to help myself and then others get to more respectful disagreement. I'm like, I didn't realize there was a whole other category called disrespectful agreement as we begin diving into the research.
Hmm.
And disrespectful agreement might happen in a sense where on one side, we could be in a meeting together and, we could be meeting with, say Sarah and I'm talking to you and you give a great idea. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome, Monica. Thank you for sharing that idea. And then behind your back, I'm talking to Sarah like, what in the world was she saying? Like, I don't know why she would even think that. Or you could have
Yeah.
come over to the house for tea and it was like, oh man, that's a great idea, Monica. And then I go around the block to my house. I'm like, ooh, I don't know why was Monica saying that, right? So that's one aspect where a person it will agree with you in person, but disagree behind your back. And as a person who spent quite a bit of time in the South, I find that to sometimes be very prevalent, and still live in the South. But I've also seen on the other side where you might have grown up in a society, a culture, a family where you were taught that children should be seen and not heard.
Hmm.
And then you carry that into adulthood. And so you avoid conflict at all times because you might have seen it in either very challenging, violent, or verbally and or sometimes physically ways. Or you might have also not seen it because the parents took it behind closed doors, so you never got an opportunity to see what healthy conflict looked like. Or you may have seen great examples, right? We've had people in our research, or more of our qualitative research, that have run the gamut. And I wanted to begin to also help people address that aspect of
Yeah.
disrespectful agreement. Because even though they may agree sometimes in their silence, they're disrespecting themselves in the process.
Mm.
And so that's where I didn't know that I would stumble upon this aspect to help people spend more time in respectful disagreement, which respect is not just for the person, it's also for oneself.
Okay, so as they're thinking about, oh, whoops, this is how I've seen conflict. I either like face it head on, maybe in ways that actually aren't ultimately healthy for different reasons. Maybe I avoid at all costs. Maybe I pretend I'm agreeing when I really am not, and that's bad for
Mhm.
everybody. Okay, why does identifying that matter in terms of seeing that disagreement actually can lead to more connection? Like,
Yeah.
because I think that's another part of the resistance piece is them thinking like, well, if I disagree, then I'm going to damage the relationship. Well, no,
Yeah.
how in your experience and your professional experience and your personal experience has it actually been the opposite? Disagreement
Yeah.
leads to connection.
Yeah. Well, I had to first realize, and this is just part of my own self work. And I want to ask you the same question. Monica, who are the only people that you and I can control?
Ourselves.
Yeah, it's our kids. And so the interest, no, I'm joking. I tried, it didn't work. Right?
It's like,
All
well,
four
I
of mine, it did
wish.
not work. I don't know how this missed me, right? Yeah. But ourselves, right? And I had to realize that I had to show up for Justin in
Mm,
healthy ways without overthinking how the person would respond.
mm,
And that became meaningful for me. Now there's still things where I process and it bothers me and I deal with it. Um, but and sometimes it's very scary, right? So I recently actually had about 3 weeks ago had to have a tough conversation with someone and I didn't want to have it.
mm,
Um, you know, they were saying some things through text, which is one of the worst forms of sharing disagreement. And I know that I know this work. And so I began sending voice notes because I know in hearing voice, you can get tone, but they weren't getting the hint. And so I had to shut down the conversation and say,
mm,
hey, this is not being healthy. Um, and I was at the point where I was either going to remove myself from this relationship or we were going to have this tough conversation. And I was like, you know what? The brave thing is to have this tough conversation.
Mm.
And as we, had the conversation and we set, did all the stuff that I've researched in terms of setting guidelines, having a neutral place for conversation, listening deeply. But we actually are more connected now
Hmm.
than I would have ever thought. Because as we dug into it, we came to the table of like, hey, we're here because we both love each other. Right. And even though we might see this thing very differently, which we actually did see very differently, but it we made it a bigger deal because of through text and all these things. And because we went through that tough moment, we're actually more deeply connected. And this is one of the things I often say. I don't consider somebody a true friend, until we've gone through something, no longer wanted to be friends, but still remain friends. Because it's easy to be friendly when everything is great and everything is good and there's no conflict and but it's harder to have that conversation, to come out on the other side. And one of the things I feel like is that we are more deeply connected now than ever before. And that's what I realized that we often are afraid of. I was afraid of like, what's going to happen with this relationship? But I had to be okay to say, I can't just allow this to be in the back of my mind every time we interact, we engage, and not address it, because it actually would hurt the relationship and cause me more stress in the process. And so that's been one way that kind of leaning into that disagreement actually has helped us to be more connected. And we're based on the issue we're dealing with, we're going to go to a workshop together to kind of get more information and hear about it. And so um, I'm living this stuff out too, right? It's not just stuff that I researched and studied. I struggle with it, but it's about progress.
I see what you did there. Uh, I actually love learning from people who aren't like, I do this perfect all the time, or it's
Yeah.
so easy for me. I
Yeah.
love learning from people who are like, hey, this is going to be messy
Yes.
and nuanced. And whatever I share with you isn't meant to be like a blanket prescription of what you're supposed to do.
Yes.
So that's what you're clearly doing so well. Before we get more into the guidelines for
Yeah.
them, those pillars that you mentioned, which I think I already know they're not going to be like, here's exactly how you start a sentence, and here's how
No.
you end the conversation. It's
Not
not
at
going to
all.
be prescriptive. It's going to be more like, deep.
Yeah.
I do have to ask this first. It's like,
Yeah.
is the goal of this to be connected to everyone about everything? Or is it wise to start from a place where you don't have to do these kind of hard conversations that actually can lead to more connection
Yeah.
with everyone about everything? How do they differentiate, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah. So for me, it's not about everyone with everything, right? Because there are some disagreements that for some of us, we feel compelled to share our ideas or thoughts about everything. And at first, they'll be like, you have to identify, is this even worth it for you to share, right? Do you feel you have to disagree, right? Because you don't always, right? There's many times people have shared some things with me and I completely disagree, but I listen, I dig in deeper, all these kind of things. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, well, thank you for sharing. And that's
Yeah.
and I don't have to go into, well, I actually don't practice Pilates and I do, right? Like, no, like, it's just, but we sometimes feel the need to almost convince others why we're doing something that they also need to be convinced, right? I was having a conversation with one of my friends today about, the Peloton and working out. And she had shared that she, was not, she left the gym, is doing the Peloton full time. She has the bike, the rower, the tread, all that kind of stuff. I just have the Peloton. And one of the things that it felt like, and I could be wrong, right? But it felt like she was trying to convince me like why the gym is no longer good. Right. And I'm like, I love the gym, right? And I love my Peloton. But she showed me her perfect streak where she had done like 84 weeks in a
I
row.
know
And it,
exactly what you're talking about because I have the Peloton app, on my app, my cheap Amazon bike. But yes, I know the streak.
yes, yes. So I have like, that's like my coach only has me doing it like once or twice a week. So I'm like, I won't have that streak. Cause you like your coach. I was like, yeah, I do some
Yeah.
aspect of like natural bodybuilding. And one of the things I shared with her, I was like, you know what? I love that you found something that really works for you. And I didn't have to convince her why I still go to the gym even though I felt she was trying to convince me. I thought, right? Again, it could be wrong, but I didn't have to go into it. Well, I actually go to the gym because of what I do with my muscles and protein and like, no, like, it was just like listening to her story, engaging, and then saying, I didn't need to address that. So on the other hand, there are some issues that we do need to address. And like to your point, there's no like perfect, descriptor of when to address it or when not to address it. I know if there's something that really continues to bother you, it probably is something that's worth addressing first with yourself and people that you might trust to say, how am I processing this? Is it processed in a healthy way? For me, that's been a therapist. Sometimes it's friends that, are willing to challenge me. Um, and then also realizing that they're also free to disagree with me and that I might have perceived it wrong and I might have gotten it wrong. And so it's never to influence people to my side, right? That's not the purpose of respectful disagreement. It's to have honest conversations that allow for vulnerability, allow for deep listening, and allow for that person to be heard and valued, as well
Mm,
as myself to be heard and valued. But I don't control them, Monica. I can only choose how I show up. And I have that resolve in my head about like, hey, they may take this left, and I still want to practice the principles that I think will allow them to feel heard and valued, even if they don't necessarily reciprocate it in the same moment. And so it's not about everyone, about everything,
yeah.
but it is about identifying like, hey, who really matters to me in life? And with this friend, I wanted to, not the exercise friend, but the friend I had to meet with. Um, I value him. We would get together monthly. We would talk about our issues. It was just three of us, and I was like, this conversation matters. And so I decided to have the conversation. And so yes, it's not about everyone with everything at all the times, but it is about making those decisions about things that are really impacting. And it did impact me. It was causing me stress, and so I needed to have it.
Sure. No, that helps. That helps get clarity, I think. And just as you shared, I think it's, you can feel it in your body
Yeah,
too. I mean, not to get super woo. I'm not even that kind of person traditionally,
yeah,
but I do feel like there's something to say for that. Like when you feel like if I'm carrying something around for so long, or even
yeah,
like for a couple days or whatever, like that seems like the thing and the person that
yeah.
matters to even be willing to be open.
100%. And if it still bothers me, right? Because at the end of the day, and everybody's different, right? Some people carry
Mhm.
things very differently. Like for me, one of the things is I often will go to sleep and forget like stuff happened.
Yeah,
Like, and I will be good, right, the next day, and it won't bother me. I'm not like
sure.
sweeping it under the rug and like secretly thinking about it. I'm really good. But when I wake up and I'm still processing it and it's still bothering me and I still trying to figure out ways, I need to address something either with myself or with that person or a combination of the two. And so I agree with you. I do think, how we process is vastly different, but we all know like when something's really bothering us.
Mhm. Well, let's talk more about the how. You've already mentioned what do you call it? Your 5 pillars? I feel like
Yeah.
I'm missing a word.
Yeah. Five pillars of respectful disagreement.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Um, what we used to call five pillars of bridging the divide because we
Mhm.
often found there's a divides within our disagreements. But these are just ways to respectfully disagree with people. And pillar number one is challenge your perspective. And it's interesting because I did my own kind of, deep dive, read 101 articles in about a year's time frame, from certain dates to dates from January 1st, 2024 to January 15th, 2025. And I began asking, like, what are all the common things that everybody's saying about conflict resolution, having tough conversations, da da da. And then what's the one thing missing? And Monica, the one thing missing was this very big thing that we talked about it in pillar number one is challenge your perspective.
Hmm.
Because most articles deal with when you're having the argument, what do you do? When you're having the disagreement, what do you do?
Yeah.
Rather than what do you do before any disagreement even occurs?
Hmm.
Right? There is some articles that kind of hinted to it, but none that just went into like and this is one of the things we think is the most foundational aspect of what we do is how do we challenge our perspective? And so do we put ourselves in situations intentionally, environments that are different than what we believe,
Mm.
different than what we hold to be true to ourselves? And I realized I got that from my mom. Like my mom, I'm a mama's boy in all the best ways of it. But like I remember growing up and we didn't have a lot of money, but my mom would make sure we went to events that were different. We went to Oktoberfest and Polish festivals and First People's powwows and Hispanic Heritage Month events and all these things. We brought in exchange students from France and Germany and Japan and all these things. We didn't have a lot of money. And my mom would even make us go to events that we disagreed with. And I'd be sitting in the audience like, Mom, we don't even agree with this. Why are we here? Right.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that she was planting these seeds of humanity. That
Mm.
even in the midst of our disagreements of people who think differently, vote differently, go to different rallies, all these things, that there's still humanity there. And I didn't realize that I was not living up to my mom's ideals, because I remember interviewing my mom for my last 2 books. I was like, Mom, like, where did you get this whole philosophy from? I thought I was smart. And I realized it really just came from my mom.
Yeah.
And my mom shared a powerful story with me that I'll share with you. My mom was one of the first Black female air traffic controllers in the Air Force. And she would sometimes be stationed in Japan, she shared. And there were some soldiers in that same 2-year time frame that never left base. And
Wow.
she was like, Justin, I never want you to be like that and
Mm.
never leave your metaphorical home base and not get to experience the beauty of people and cultures around you. And so challenging perspective has become a big piece. And why this is important? It's important because if we never challenge our perspective, we're not building up those muscles in those moments where we actually do have those disagreements to hear views that are different than ours, sometimes slightly or drastically, right? Social media has conditioned our algorithms to flow with things that agree with us, that like us, the things that we like or post or different things, right? So we continue to get what we often call the echo chamber of people like us. And that was Justin. And so I realized I was conforming myself to what I call my circles of comfort.
Mm.
People who look like me, thought like me, believe like me. And I realized I was not living up to my mom's ideals. And so I created this concept called the Circles of Grace Challenge. And this is a strategy to lean into the challenger perspective. So the Circles of Grace Challenge is simply this. Every 6 to 12 months, I go to events, experiences, or engage with people, and either which I don't know a lot about and or I disagree with. And I go asking 2 questions. What did I learn about this event, experiences in a person? And what did I learn about myself as I experienced them?
Mm.
And that intentionality has helped build the muscles up where I'm consistently hearing views that I either didn't know, I've gotten wrong, or that I still disagree with, but I've gotten the humanity firsthand perspective from it. And so that's the essence of pillar number 1.
I want to take that challenge. That is really cool. And I love that that came from your mom and her own lived experiences and what she wanted to
Yeah.
instill in you as her child. So good job,
Yeah.
Mom.
Thank you, Mom.
Yeah.
Shout out to all the moms that are working their butts off, whether in the home, outside the home, both.
Yeah.
Because it's those small things that you don't even realize. So it's challenged me of like, oh, Justin, are you taking your kids to events
Mm-hmm.
they disagree with, that you disagree
Yeah.
with? Are you taking them to hear perspectives that are, and so it's been very encouraging.
Yeah. Okay. You're making me think about some things I've been doing as mom. Like, just don't talk about this thing to this person at this family event. Like, don't bring up that thing. Like, but okay, maybe yeah, we got to do some learning there.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about the second pillar.
Yeah. Pillar number 2 is be the student. And it's where we focus more on listening and learning rather than being a lecturer. And
Yeah.
what I love about learning, if we adopt this process, I love Carol Dweck's work on mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and the growth mindset being such a huge aspect of just failure is a part of our, just another data point of learning in all these places, right? It's just we can learn. And we don't have to be compared to other people. And so the pillar number 2 is where we choose to be a student. And so when you're in a disagreement, go into it asking, what can I learn
Hmm.
about what this person is sharing? And or even what can I learn about this person's story about how they got there?
Got it.
Right? And when we adopt that, and there's some really fascinating research on learning, and there's a theory called the inverted U theory. And it's just there's 2 points where we don't learn effectively. Number 1, when we think we know absolutely nothing. And what do you think the other point is?
We think we know it all.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's often masking our lack of confidence in things at times, is that we
Mm.
have to overcompensate, right? I've often said that I used to spend so much time trying to prove my worth that I lost opportunities of simply being my worth.
Mm.
And in learning, it's like, oh, tell me more about that. Or how did you get there?
Yeah.
Or, what's been your story? And that's one of the things with my buddy that I had to deal with. Like, I realized, like, I never really heard his history and how he got to this point about making this decision or why he values this.
Okay.
And so I chose to be a student, right?
Mm.
So instead of going and saying, hey, I'm going to tell you why you're wrong, I'm going to tell you all the things that are off, I'm going to tell you all, I was like, hey, I realized I never heard your story about this. And that's the same thing I did with my dad, right? As I sat down, I was like, I'm going to be a student. I'm not just going to tell him I'm mad, I'm angry, I'm upset, I can't believe he did that, he wasn't there for me. I was like, Dad, I realized I never heard your story. I'd love to hear your story. And that's one way that we can lean in and being a student, but we have to intentionally create these spaces to be a student. Let me give you one practical way we can be a student. Right? Because I'm a big strategy person. And it's only math will do today. It's called 1MC over W. Now, what 1MC over W stands for is one meaningful connection per week. All right. Where we intentionally build into our calendars 15 to 20 minutes to have a meaningful conversation with somebody. People we know, people we don't know, people in our neighborhoods, people that we're, walking our kids or pets down the street, right? Like all these things. And choosing to have that. If you're like, oh, that's too much. I already have too much to do, Justin. My toddler's not sleeping. I can't believe, right? But flip the W upside down and make it one meaningful connection per month. And maybe it's one lunch a month. But the purpose of it has to be intentional. And I want us to be careful that we don't just choose to have lunch and have conversations that are meaningful with our neighbors and other things that we like, agree with. We know that there's this deep
Yes.
connection, but also have the conversation with people that we don't know, we may see that sign in their yard and why would they do that, right? Or, they may have a different parenting style than we do, right? And we can see it on display because it helps us to better learn, to better understand, to hear the journey and perspective of others. And that's one way that we can really lean into being better students of people. But in the disagreement, it's choosing to learn something new. And so I go into it, and I don't always succeed at this, but I go into it asking the question, what can I learn about what they're sharing, and or what can I learn about their story of how they got to what they're sharing? And so that's tool number 2.
This podcast is sponsored by Go Pure Beauty. You may already know this about me, but I love skincare. I have been so hyper diligent about taking care of my face since my early 20s, thanks to a great dermatologist I happened to visit at the time. But guess what I forgot about for most of those years? My neck. Did you forget too? The skin on your neck is thinner, more delicate, and less oily than facial skin, so it requires special care. That's why Go Pure Beauty developed their revolutionary Tighten and Lift Neck Cream. Powered by clinically proven active ingredients, this advanced formula is designed to visibly firm, smooth, and rejuvenate the delicate skin on your neck and chest in as little as 4 to 8 weeks. I've been using the Tighten and Lift Neck Cream, and I've been loving it. The silky texture is so nice. My very sensitive skin has responded to it very well, and that's thanks to it being paraben and sulfate-free and made without harsh chemicals. For a limited time, our listeners get 25% off GoPure with code PROGRESS at checkout. And GoPure isn't just about your neck. They have a full line of science-backed skin and body care to brighten, hydrate, and restore your glow from head to toe. From powerful vitamin C serums to deeply hydrating retinol moisturizers, every product is packed with clean, effective ingredients that deliver real results. With over 1 million jars sold, this beauty secret is no longer a secret. For a limited time, our listeners get 25% off GoPure with code PROGRESS at checkout. Just head to gopurebeauty.com/progress, use code PROGRESS, and you're all set. And after you buy, do us a favor. When they ask where you heard about GoPure, tell them it was from our show. For years, I have been teaching women how to do habits differently. I have been so grateful to see the concepts that have changed the most for you with responses from women of our community, like you are changing the habit game for all of us. And this is so needed. And you should write a book on this. Well, guess what? I am. And I'm so eager for you to get your hands on it, hopefully sometime in 2026. And since I can't share the title yet, and also since I may end up self-publishing, I need a committee of gal pals, if you will, like you, who are ready to be my early test readers, to pre-order the book, and to act as grassroots publicists the moment each of those steps are made ready. Would you like to be on that book launch committee? Get on the free list by going to aboutprogress.com/book committee. Even if you just want to be the first in the know with any book news, that's where you sign up. Again, go to aboutprogress.com/book committee. It's in the show notes for you. I can't wait to share as much as I can with you along the way, and I am already so grateful for your support. Yeah, I see how the first two are so connected, but also different. What's the third pillar?
Pillar number 3 is cultivate your curiosity. And it's where we fill in the gaps with curiosity rather than conclusions.
Ooh.
And, one of the things that we've often done, the saying, curiosity killed the cat. First of all, we shouldn't be killing cats, but just to be, I'm a dog lover, but I still love cats. But we often say curiosity and kill the cat, conclusions did.
Oh,
And we often
yeah.
fill in the gaps with what we think we know rather
Okay.
than being more curious, asking
Meaning what we
questions.
think the other person is going to say or what they believe.
Yes.
Okay.
We do the dotted line dilemma, right? In our brains, right? And so I share this with people because people think there's something wrong with them. No, our brains actually work against us in this place because our brains want to conserve energy for things it thinks it doesn't know, right? And so what it does is that when it gets information, whether second or third hand information, news, social media, other people, it collects them and categorizes them for future use. That's the efficiency of our brain. But what the challenge is that sometimes it pulls that moment where it's at one data point, and you think that because all people with red sweaters, cut you off, now you see a red sweater and you automatically trigger this person's going to cut me off, and so I need to protect myself, right? And also a benign example, but that is real. It's called the dotted line dilemma. Is that we
Yeah.
start filling in the gaps with the next dot that we think is going to exist based upon the information we've already taken in. And it's like this, and I want you to do this, but I want all those who are listening to do the same thing. I want you to answer quickly. Don't think about it. What's the correct side of the road to drive on? Go.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Except when you're Australia, or Jamaica or UK, and it's because our context shapes what we experience and see,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I've had people who literally could not answer initially because they've actually lived in both places,
Got it. Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And so that's part of our curiosity. The question comes back is, what country are you in? Right. And that helps us to better understand your people's perspective. So let me give you one practical way to lean into being more curious, right? And I love Julia Minson's work on this because she's like, we know we should be more curious. We can stop telling people, just be more curious. What are the behaviors of curiosity that help us?
Okay.
And those are the things to lean into. So one way is what we call the power of 3. And it's challenging what we call a double Dutch style of communication. And double Dutch, for those who don't know, it's more than just one single jump rope. It's 2 ropes going like this, but there's somebody waiting to jump in like this, or waiting to jump in, waiting to jump in.
Yeah.
And that's how we communicate, Monica. We're
Um,
waiting to jump in. Like, take a
mm,
breath. I can share my perspective. I can tell you why you're wrong. I can tell you what my journey was through this,
mm.
rather than listening deeply to the power of 3. And the power of 3 is simply this. I say, Monica, how's your day today? You're like, oh, my day is fine. Monica, my day is fine too. That's power of 1. The power of 2 is, Monica, how's your day? Oh, my day's fine. Well, what made your day fine? Oh, I heard this interesting bald head speaker. I know that bald head speaker. That's the power of 2.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
Power of 3 is where I take it a step further. Oh, what'd you learn? What made him interesting?
Hmm.
Oh, we talked about Circles of Grace Challenge, talked about 1 meaningful connection per week. Oh, wow, is there anything else I can learn? But what we often do is that we found in our research, people often lean to the power of 1 or power of 2 because they can't wait to get it back to themselves. Not because they're narcissists, not because they're self-absorbed. They're trying to make connections,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But we have to be very careful in our desire authentically to make connections. We've started taking control.
Mm.
And so when people are sharing their story, their perspective, or their viewpoint, instead of us automatically filling in the gaps with that conclusion, let's turn to curiosity. Let's listen more deeply and challenge our double Dutch style of communication, because we might find that we're actually not even talking about the same thing. And that's what me and my buddy found in our conversation. I was like, we actually agree on this. I was like, we're approaching it from two different perspectives, right? But I wouldn't have found that out until I chose to not only challenge my
Yes.
perspective earlier, be the
Mhm.
student, kind of learn, but now cultivate my curiosity. And I asked more questions and dug in deeper. And so that allowed us to have a deeper, more meaningful conversation.
Love that. Power of three. 3 questions deep, at
Yeah,
least.
at least.
What's the 4th pillar?
Yeah. Pillar number 4 is to seek the gray. And when you seek the gray, it's about finding what I call common ground.
Okay.
And common ground is not middle ground. I want to be very careful. Middle ground implies 50-50. It's like, that's why I don't believe in work-life balance, because there
Mm.
really is no balance. It's a blend. And common ground could be 60-40, 70-30, 95-5. It could just be that person is a human being that's worthy of dignity, value, and respect.
Got it.
And give you a big issue to kind of highlight this. We talk about gun rights or gun control, right? So instead of diving into conversations around, you're stupid, why don't you have a gun? Or why do you have a gun, right? I think that's unsafe, da-da-da. I think, what if we like, you know what? I'm really glad we both really care about the safety of our families. That's a common ground place that shows that you're willing to operate in that space of gray rather than the black and white that we often are trained to see. Very binary, 0, 1. Even in my book, what most people don't know, if you look at the cover, most people don't know until I tell them there's a very thin line of gray between the black and white, and that's very intentional
Oh, cool.
because we often don't see it. And so when
Mhm.
you see the gray, that common ground, you ask, what is C? It helps us to better understand and connect to the person. That's what I had to do with my dad, right? I still disagreed with the outcome, but I better understood how he got there. And
Mm.
I realized my dad did the best he could with what he had in the moment. And that was my place of common ground. Because I've known as a parent, I've sometimes done the best I could
Mhm.
in the moment that I had. And I haven't been perfect. And I've yelled at my kids and I've apologized and all these kind of things. And so it helped me to find that common ground place that I sometimes think that we miss. And so in those disagreements, it's intentionally seeking out and finding, where is this gray? Because if I don't search for the gray, I'll only see it in the black and white terms that I went into the conversation with.
Mhm. Okay, I can see that. What's the 5th and final pillar?
Yeah. It's to agree to respect.
Okay.
And notice I didn't say agree to disagree,
Mhm. Mhm.
because I've seen a lot of people agree to disagree very disrespectfully.
Oh, yeah.
And agree to respect is where you find, you formulate your plan to humanize the other person as well as yourself. So there's 2 aspects of this. So
Mm.
one aspect is what we call one way that you can fully acknowledge people, one way to agree to respect. Um, and full acknowledgement does not mean full agreement, but we've often confused the two. And so I love the work of Jean Zhao, Stanford researcher, came with this concept called thank you because. So imagine we're having a tough conversation, you share something, dive into the pillars. And I'm like, you know what, Monica, I want to say thank you so much for sharing that because um, you shared it in a way that I never heard before. And I appreciate you taking your time to share that with me. Or, wow, Monica, number 2 really stood out of the 3 things you shared. I have to do some more research on number 2, but thank you for sharing that because it really highlighted something I hadn't processed it in a different way. Or, wow, Monica, this is a tough conversation for us to have. I simply want to thank you because you didn't have to have it with me today, and you still chose to. That says a lot about your character. Now, not once did I say I agreed with you, Monica.
Mhm.
We've often conflated full acknowledgement for full agreement, and we can leave every conversation with full acknowledgement. Thank you for sharing your perspective. Wow, I heard something different I hadn't heard before, all these things, right? And so that's one way that we can do it. One other way, it's not about that person, it's about ourselves. And it's also if we've chosen to share our perspective, we have to agree to respect ourselves too, and not just shut down what we're thinking, right? Now, again, not everything is worth sharing our perspective, but when we've chosen to share, I'm gonna give us one secret sauce to do this. Ask to share your perspective.
Hmm.
It seems so counterintuitive because in today's society and social media, we don't have to ask to do anything,
Yeah.
right? I'm just gonna tell you. But what it does, so say we had a tough conversation, right, about our parenting styles, Monica, and it's like, wow, thank you sharing your perspective, Monica. I better understand how you parent or what the journey of how you got there, what your parents taught you about parenting. Um, hey, Monica, you know, are you open to me sharing my perspective that might be a little bit different than yours?
I'd
Now,
always
what I've
say,
just done,
yes. Like, as soon
right?
as you say that, it's like, yeah, sure.
What I've just done is I've opened you up to psychologically get ready to receive. I call it the dentist treatment, right? Because if a dentist just goes into our teeth, just starts drilling, imagine they did to one of our kids without prepping them, right? We'd be like,
Yeah.
"What are you
Oh
doing
my gosh.
first?" Because you can
Mhm,
hold on to the things, prepare your feet, or all these things. Or that's how we often communicate with people. We just
mm,
dive in. You know what? I think I don't like that idea, right? The way I parent is, and we haven't even asked, can we share our own perspectives?
hmm,
So psychologically, it opens them up. But two, if they say no, or I've also sometimes can sense emotional intelligence. This might not be the right time. We may
sure.
have talked a long time, but we may be hungry, we may be tired, the baby could be crying in the background, all these kind of things. I might also infuse like, hey, like, thank you for sharing your perspective. I better understand how you got there. Would you be open for me sharing my perspective that might be a little bit different? And or is this the right time for me to share it?
Got it. Mhm,
And what it does is now a person's open to receiving. If they've said yes, most times they say yes. There's been times they said no. And now older Justin, mature Justin, leaves the bridge open. I used to shut the bridge, but I don't want to talk to you anyway. But more mature Justin says, "Hey, you know what? Thank you for sharing. Or let's come back to it, or maybe a week from now is better, right?" Um, and so when we have the conversation, but that's one of the secret pieces that we're missing when we share ours is to ask the person, are they open to
mhm.
receiving it at that time?
I've had conversations about how to have hard conversations with quite a few people over the years. This one has not only created so many new light bulbs for me, like some deep light bulbs where I'm like, oh, that's why that thing didn't work. And that's why I've been avoiding
Oh,
this and, stuff like that. But it's also given me such a practical path to do
mhm.
it better that I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful that you were able to be here today and teach us so much. I have, just a couple quick questions that we
Yeah.
typically end with, but I first want to ask, like, why?
And
And it's just more like this seems not only is this so revolutionary, it's also hard.
yes, it is.
It's gonna take a lot of effort. So why is it worth the effort to you? And you can
Yeah.
even just speak personally, why is it worth the effort?
Yeah. It's been worth the effort for me because, I look at the situation with my dad that I've been avoiding all those years, and I tell people, you have no idea what's on the other side of respectful disagreement. Like now, guess what? I've embraced my heritage in ways that I didn't even know I was holding back.
Mm,
While my dad and we aren't traveling around the world and camping and all that kind of stuff, we have a better relationship now. We are more connected. I don't have that same angst on Father's Day, right? The connection is deepened. I've even, what I've embraced, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. I never would have realized I would embrace like supporting and working towards improving education in my dad's home village, right?
wow.
Like we're almost finished building a new middle school in my dad's home village, right? We did a clean water project. We did, dual desk, and that all came from the conversation with my dad. Not that he said I need to do it, but in forgiving him, I was now willing to embrace things I didn't even realize I was holding back from him. So you have no idea what's on the other side of respectful disagreement. But I'm gonna give other two pieces for other people who are asking why. Not only for you, but there could be a light bulb moment that goes off for them that allows you to connect in a way that they didn't even realize they needed. And the second aspect of that is sometimes we're healthier, a little less stress, because I've also had to create boundaries. Now, I'm very careful with that word boundaries over barriers. Barriers never allow somebody to get back. Boundaries create healthy moments for your own safety, your own physical, emotional well being.
Mhm.
And sometimes there have been conversations and people in my life that I've had to create a boundary for, not a barrier, but a boundary and communicate that boundary because I needed to operate in a space where I was best for my kids.
Yeah.
And I couldn't keep dealing with the stress of the conversation, the messiness. And sometimes I brought in that same messiness. And so I say with people, it's also for our own mental health, our own emotional well-being, rather than consistently just dealing with or hiding or sweeping under the rug because we're taught to, right? Um, so those are reasons why. And it's mental health. It's better connections. It's being able to have more rich experience, and it's doing what my mom taught us. It's leaving our metaphorical home bases to get to experience the beauty of people and cultures around us. We might learn to drive left in a country that drives on the left side.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I want to talk to you so much more, but let's wrap this up and have them know where to go if they want to learn more from you. I know you've written a couple of books, but
Yeah.
so feel free to share. Where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah. One of the best places to go is I Respectfully Disagree. You can find it on Amazon or Barnes Nobles, all those other places online. But it's I Respectfully Disagree, how to have difficult conversations in a divided world. And it's about the big conversations, but also the small ones in our household with our spouse or even our kids. I want to hit this quick. I make a lot of mistakes as a dad, right? I've had to learn how to practice these same principles with my kids because I can get into ego and think
Yeah.
I'm the parent. I know what's best. And there's been times I haven't listened to my daughter Lydia, and I haven't dug in deep, and I haven't, and it's been a bad outcome because she was actually right. But because I was an ego, I'm the parent, I'm the leader. I didn't value her voice,
Hmm.
and so I want to share, like, I still make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes in this. But what it's allowed me to do is to apologize quicker and get back onto the pillars of
Hmm.
being a student, cultivating my curiosity, seeking the gray, and agreeing to respect. And those have done wonders for me as a parent. So that's the first place I'd say to go is check out the book, and you'll
Okay.
see that I talk about parenting and how I suck as a parent often, but I'm getting better. I'm making
Yeah.
progress. And the last place is workmeaningful.com. And that's kind of the umbrella organization where we do all of our work on really improving the employee, but also personal experience of people.
Well, we'll make sure to link to both of those places. We always end with the final question. What is one small way listeners can take action on what they learned today? So what would
Yeah.
that be?
I think this is something that doesn't necessarily require other people because sometimes that's one thing that stops people
Mm-hmm.
is to challenge your perspective. I really want to
Yeah.
encourage people to take the Circles of Grace challenge.
Yeah.
It's not something that um, it doesn't have to, it can be as complex or simple as you want. It could be a person in your neighborhood you realize you just hadn't talked to,
Okay.
right? For whatever
Mm-hmm.
reason, that you're like, oh, I wonder why I've been blocking that. I realized for Justin, part of my Circles of Grace challenge, and again, I'm very vulnerable in this stuff. It was Black women who are married who are in relationships with white men. And I realized my director of operations, Dari, is a Black woman who's married to Derek, a white male.
Yeah.
And I grew up, I was taught that was wrong, and da da da. And I would see that, and I'm like, "Oh, there's not enough brothers for you," and it really bothered me. But I realized that's not the issue, right? Because people may be listening, like, "Oh, how dare you think that?" Right? We all have the things that we have, right? The issue is not I had the thought; it's what do I do with the thought once I have it?
Mm.
And so I began doing something, and I realized I wasn't listening to people's stories. I never asked Dari how she and Derek met.
Huh?
And
Yeah.
then more and more there's a reason why, right? It's a unconscious thing that I was doing.
Sure.
I didn't wanna know, right? And so in taking the Circles of Grace challenge, it allows us to sometimes deal with some of those things that we didn't realize were issues. And to close that story, I still see a Black woman and a white man. I'm like, it's not no good brothers for you, but how I've chosen to respond to it has been different.
Got
I
it.
go through mental reframing. I now ask to hear more stories, and it's shaped how I choose to engage. And so, whether or not you engage with a person, or reading movies or books, or learning about philosophy or theory or something that's different, that's one practical thing that you can do. Is take the Circles of Grace challenge.
I'm going to do it. This whole conversation was so wonderful. Thank you very much. We'd love to have you back anytime. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. We made progress today. Yes.
We did. Oh gosh, so much progress. I love how you kept alluding to it. I hope this episode gave you the hug and kick in the pants you need to grow. I will now share the progress pointers. These are the notes I took so you don't have to. And those in my newsletter will get them in a graphic form each week. You can sign up at aboutprogress.com/newsletter. Number 1, in the pursuit of not disagreeing, you are foregoing deeper connections with those that matter most to you. You have no idea of what potential is on the other side of respectful disagreement. Number 2, here are the 5 pillars to respectfully disagreeing. 1, challenge your perspective. Before you even talk, be curious about your own point of view and if it's truly the full picture. 2, be the student. Focus on listening and learning the other person's story more than being the teacher. 3, cultivate your curiosity. Fill in the gaps with curiosity rather than conclusions. In other words, ask questions. 4, seek the gray. Find common ground, which doesn't have to be the 50-50 middle ground. And 5, agree to respect. Formulate your plan to humanize the other person as well as yourself. Remember, full acknowledgement doesn't equate full agreement. Your Do Something challenge this week is to take the Circles of Grace challenge and connect with someone or a community who you don't understand or agree with. I'm totally going to do this. I loved this conversation with Justin and how he totally practices what he preached. And I also really value that he admits that this isn't easy for him either. And it's not something he naturally leans into, but how it's blessed his life and made his relationships better. And I think we all need more of those things right now. This podcast is listener supported. Members of the Supporters Club get access to 3 levels of exclusive benefits from more time to more content with me. My favorite benefit is more personal, my private premium always ad-free podcast, where I lean into the personal side of personal development. It's truly a joy to connect more with the supporters, and I would invite you to be one by going to aboutprogress.com/support. The Supporters Club make my work with About Progress free and available to all, so thank you. You can always support the show for free. Make sure you have subscribed or are following the show, share it with a friend, leave a review, and really important right now, subscribe to and watch us on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening. Now go and do something with what you learned today. Okay, let's pause for just a second, because what I'm going to do is do the magic of editing, and I'm going to ask the question I should have asked you.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's good.
Because this is, we'll come back to the pillars. So I'm going to ask the question, I'll put it in. What kinds of conflict styles do you see people are holding on to when they're thinking about these kind of conversations? I'm going to loop that in. You just shared a few.
Awesome.
Then can I expand on what you just shared and ask another question? And then we'll get back to the pillars.